She wasn't supposed to be there, a civilian in a room full of admirals. They ignored her until the system crashed, and suddenly she was the only one who knew the code. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly, waves shimmering like shards of glass under the rising sun. Aboard the carrier, USS Halcyon, the bridge buzzed with the sharp rhythm of naval precision. Commands, reports, acknowledgments, every voice a part of a machine that had functioned flawlessly for years. Admiral Royce Calden stood at the center, posture stiff, medals glinting against the blue-gray of his immaculate uniform. His voice cut across the room like steel. Prepare systems for Operation Sovereign Tide. Authentication begins in 90 minutes. No errors, not today. Every officer moved with purpose. Every console flickered with anticipation of the drill. And yet, just behind the navigation station, unnoticed at first, sat a woman. She wore no uniform, no insignia. Just a plain navy suit, her hair pinned in a functional bun streaked with silver. A small black notebook rested on her lap, pen moving in silent rhythm as she observed. She had no nameplate, no clearance badge in sight. She did not speak. For nearly 30 minutes, no one questioned her presence, until Admiral Calden's eyes found her. "Who authorized a civilian on my bridge?" His voice cracked like a whip, halting every conversation mid-sentence. Officers froze, glancing nervously at one another. No one responded. No one claimed responsibility. The woman didn't flinch. She simply closed her notebook, her eyes sharp but silent, scanning the room as if she had expected this moment. "Security!" Calden barked. "Remove this woman immediately. She has no business here." Lieutenant Corrin, the executive officer, stepped forward. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with me." Behind him, a younger officer smirked. "Tourists get lost all the time," he muttered just loud enough for others to hear. A ripple of laughter passed quietly through the junior ranks. The woman rose, calm, composed, and allowed herself to be escorted from the bridge. No resistance, no explanation. As the doors closed behind her, the whispers began. Who was she? How'd she even get clearance? Probably some bureaucrat's assistant. No one knew her name, and none of them expected to see her again. The corridors of the Halcyon twisted like veins through steel. The security officer led her into a modest visitor's quarters. "Ma'am, you're requested to stay here until further notice. If you need anything, use the internal comm dot." She thanked him softly. Her tone was calm, measured, almost authoritative in a way that made the lieutenant stand straighter without realizing why. Alone, she checked her watch. 89 minutes until the drill. She opened her notebook again, flipping through coded scribbles, observations, sequences, names. She turned to a fresh page, wrote a string of numbers and letters, and tore it free. Folding it carefully, she slipped it into her inner pocket. Then she waited. Precisely 87 minutes later, alarms chimed across the bridge. Authentication failure. Emergency protocols unresponsive. Systems locked. Admiral Calden slammed his fist onto the console. Override with scarlet code. "Access denied," replied the computer. "Try again," Calden barked. "Again, denied." Around him, foreign observers, representatives from allied nations, watched with sharp eyes. Their expressions shifted from concern to doubt. The United States Navy, once untouchable, was failing in front of them. Admiral Calden's voice dropped to a growl. "What the hell's happening?" And then the bridge doors opened. She walked back in. The same woman they had dismissed, ignored, even mocked. But this time, something was different. Her presence filled the room. Two security officers instinctively moved toward her, but Commander Corrin raised his hand. "Let her through," he said quietly. His voice carried a weight no one expected. The room fell into tense silence as she approached the central console. Admiral Calden's face turned crimson. "I ordered you confined. Get her out." But before he could finish, her hands moved across the console with practiced precision. 16 digits entered without hesitation. The system froze, blinked, then spoke. Sovereign override accepted. Shadow protocol authenticated. Welcome, Director Hale. Gasps rippled across the bridge. Foreign observers leaned forward. Officers who had laughed now stood pale and rigid. The Admiral's voice broke, softer now. Director? She lifted her notebook from the console, her voice calm but commanding. The drill has been compromised. You've lost control. Now I will restore it. The bridge was frozen. Every officer, every observer, every eye locked on the woman they had dismissed less than 2 hours earlier. Admiral Calden's lips trembled with words he didn't want to say. Director Hale. For the first time, she acknowledged him directly. There was no misunderstanding, Admiral. Protocol worked exactly as intended. You removed me because I was invisible. That was the point. The screens around them flickered back to life. Red warnings shifted to green. Systems hummed, restored by codes only she knew. Foreign dignitaries whispered among themselves. One, the attaché from Seoul, leaned forward, his tone edged with disbelief. You mean she outranks the Admiral? No one answered, because the truth was obvious. Commander Corrin stepped closer, his face unreadable. Director, what is your directive? She replied calmly, as if she had spoken these words 100 times before. Contain the breach, trace the intrusion, resume the drill under shadow supervision. Every console lit up with rapid sequences of code. She moved through the system with precision no one had seen before. Commands that had denied even the Admiral now yielded instantly. A single emblem appeared on the central display, a black hexagon marked only by a white line through its center. Gasps echoed across the bridge. The foreign attachés exchanged hurried glances. One of them whispered, I've seen that symbol once before. It was classified above NATO command. Admiral Calden stiffened, pride fighting fear. Why wasn't I informed? She met his eyes for the first time, her voice unshaken. Because if you knew, so would your enemies. My role is not to be seen. My authority exists only when every other system fails. Today, Admiral, it failed. The laughter from earlier was gone. The whispers were gone. Even the hum of machinery seemed quieter. Lieutenant Joran, the same officer who had mocked her hours earlier, stood pale and rigid. His eyes flickered with shame. General Harkins, one of the foreign observers, finally spoke. In 30 years, I've encountered shadow authority twice. Both times changed the course of a war. Consider yourselves privileged to have seen one. The words hung heavy in the air. Admiral Calden's jaw clenched. If this is true, then who are you really? She closed her notebook with a deliberate motion. Someone you were never meant to notice. Within minutes, the drill resumed. Every ship in the fleet reported readiness, systems stabilized, but the mood on the bridge was transformed. Where once the Admiral's word was final, now every officer waited, silently, nervously, for the civilian woman's smallest command. She gave none. Instead, she stepped back, blending once more into the periphery, as though she had never been the center of their world. The Admiral finally found his voice. Director Hale, I owe you an apology. She shook her head. No, Admiral. You owe me nothing. You followed protocol. You saw a stranger where you should have seen none. That was the correct reaction. My role is to remain invisible until the moment invisibility is no longer possible. Hours later, the drill concluded. Aircraft circled back to the carrier, landing against the fiery backdrop of a Pacific sunset. On the flight deck, crewmen worked in synchronized chaos. Engines roared, jet fuel burned, and there she stood, Director Hale, alone, hair loose now against the wind, watching the final aircraft touch down. Admiral Calden approached her quietly, his crisp uniform strangely muted against her simple attire. How long have you been aboard my ship? He asked. 3 years, she replied without looking at him. He blinked. 3 years. I thought you were just administrative staff. That was the intention. They stood in silence, the sky bleeding orange and crimson. Why wasn't I told? Calden asked finally. Because shadows don't announce themselves, Admiral. They wait. And they act only when there's no one else left to trust. 2 days later, when the Halcyon neared San Diego, she was gone. Disembarked quietly during the night, ferried away by helicopter with no ceremony, no records, no goodbye. Calden asked discreetly, but the answers were all the same. No information available. In the officers' mess, whispers turned to myth. The woman with the notebook. The only one the systems listened to? A ghost in plain sight. Even the foreign observers carried the story home, each telling it differently, but all with the same truth. A single woman had entered their bridge and shown them who truly held control. Months later, Admiral Calden walked the decks of his ship with sharper eyes. He looked at the quiet ones, the unnoticed ones, the clerk in the corner, the technician who spoke little, the contractor with no insignia. He no longer dismissed them, because now he understood. True authority often lives in silence. Director Hale had left no trace but one. A single line, scribbled on the last page of her notebook, discovered by a junior officer who found it in the empty visitors' quarters. It read, "When the systems fail, look for the one you forgot to see." She wasn't supposed to be there. And maybe that was the point. Because when everything failed, every code, every rank, every medal, the only one left standing was the woman no one noticed. This was not just a story about authority. It was a story about invisibility, deliberate, cultivated, and waiting. The day the admirals ignored her was the day she proved she had been in control all along.